All right, one of the driving forces behind what we do here on this channel and on our website, Habits V2, is we emphasize that for the majority of people, when we're stopping drinking alcohol, we're dealing with a habit, we're not dealing with a disease, right? And one of the organizations that is at the center of the addiction treatment industry, the AA, I think it's been one of the main transmitters of the word alcoholic and the idea behind alcoholism in general and the disease theory. And now every so often I get asked my opinion on the AA, whether it's a solution or a cult, and that's what we're going to kind of cover in this video. So AA is a worldwide organization, unless you don't know, founded 1935. Its purpose is helping people to recover from alcohol addiction through their famous or infamous 12 steps, right? It's a free organization, self-supporting, and it's open to anyone who wants to stop drinking alcohol. So it's been around for a long time, and it's been credited with helping people around the world to get and stay sober, right? Now, AA has been criticized by some people as being a cult, and one of the reasons, as far as I can see, is this adherence to the 12 steps, which for me felt rigid, overly dogmatic. And I think the wording of some of the steps has changed over the years, but the underlying principles remain the same. Now, there were just too many ways for me in thinking about the steps that fell out of the mindset, of the growth mindset that I like to have in my life. And one of the ideas that turned me off the most was that I had somehow lost power and control over my own drinking. The program was based around the concept that you've lost control, and the only way to regain that control is by surrendering your life to a higher power, which just didn't make sense to me. Now, I was raised with the belief in my own self that if the shit hit the fan, if there was a lot of shit going on in my life, the only person that was going to fix that was me, right? Didn't mean that I couldn't get help from anyone, but the onus for getting the job done was always on my shoulders. So the loss of control or that implication was a big barrier for me. Now, critics of AA have also argued that the organization's hierarchical structure, if you like, places a strong emphasis on obedience to the program and to those who have been sober for longer. And it can be argued that this creates a kind of dynamic where those with more time sober hold more power and they hold more influence over other people, possibly leading to psychological or emotional manipulation. And there's plenty of stories for that aspect if you look for them. Now, other concerns have been raised that center around the confidentiality of the meetings, which can often result in individuals feeling isolated from their family, from their friends, and becoming so dependent on the organization for the support in this journey. And this sense of this dependency and the feeling that you can't succeed without the help of this particular organization, it can really reinforce that power dynamic that we were speaking about earlier. Again, this is fed into that no control barrier that I was talking about earlier on. It's turned off myself, and it's turned off a lot of people from attending meetings, right? If you're told you have to go there's a lot of people that have to go there unwillingly, by some court or some other kind of external pressure. And if someone doesn't want to change, and this is the big problem. If you don't want to change, you're not going to change. If somebody's there that is an unwilling participant, they can make it much more difficult for those who have actually chosen to be there, who want to do something with themselves. Now, another aspect of the AA that's been criticized is the lack of scientific evidence, right, for its effectiveness. And while the organization claims a high success rate, there's no empirical evidence to support these claims. Another criticism is that the AA doesn't offer any medical or psychological treatment for the type of addictions that we go there for, relying instead on some kind of spiritual or moral approach. And some people believe that it's this lack of medical or scientific approach that makes AA less effective, less appropriate for people who have more serious addiction problems. And I'm not sure if I totally agree with that. First, I think that there are two separate things going on here. There are some people who've been drinking so much that they need medical attention before they even consider stopping drinking alcohol, right? Most people don't need that kind of medical attention. Same for psychological treatment. Most people don't need a psychiatrist or a psychologist. And second, I think that if someone needs medical treatment, they're likely to be pointed in the right direction, regardless of where they go, if they're getting any sort of coaching or treatment. When you need medical treatment, I think it's blatantly obvious that you do, that the person is in a bad way. So even though I don't agree with much of what the AA does, in principle, I'm sure there's always going to be a person in the room who's been around drinkers long enough that at least they can spot that somebody needs to see a doctor before they can move forward with this, at the very least. So we don't offer any medical treatment at Habits V2, but we're 100% aware when somebody needs to get help. I rarely see it, right? And as far as psychological treatment goes, I think that most people need more psychological redirection than treatment, and a good mentor can give them that, right? They don't need to go to a psychologist. So again, the word treatment puts the emphasis on the external fix rather than the individual working on an internal fix. And it's why we spend so much time trying to change the frameworks of how people look at their addiction in their lives. And finally, some people have criticized AA for its historical ties to religion and spirituality. And while the organization is open to individuals of all religions and all spiritual beliefs, it is rooted in the Christian principles of the Oxford Group, which was a religious organization that was active in the 20th century, in the early 20th century. Now, this association with religion and spirituality, it can make people, some people feel uncomfortable, and it can therefore limit their accessibility to the AA if they're in that organization, for those who don't share those same religious beliefs. But look, there's nobody who gets into the AA without knowing that there's religious undertones, right? It's one of the biggest reasons why many of us stay well clear of that organization. So, some people feel that they have no choice, no alternatives. They go to AA because it's the established route for anyone who has problems with alcohol in society. Many people go because free is the only thing that they can afford, so they don't have access to other kinds of support. That's one of the reasons why we make these videos. Not to shit all over the AA, but to show that there's other ways of doing things, other ways of thinking about this. So while AA has helped a lot of people to overcome their alcohol habit, it's not without its flaws. We'll sum up those in a moment, but I will say that if you think it hasn't helped people to stop drinking alcohol, then think again. There are many people who talk about being members of the AA for 10, 15, 20 years. I met a woman once who was 27 years alcohol-free and still going to meetings. Now, whatever else you think about it, she had successfully kept alcohol out of her mouth for 27 years. Now, if that works for you, more power to you. Like I said, for many reasons, some people feel like AA is the only option for them. So it is what it is, if that's what you're going to do. For me, that's part of my problem with Alcoholics Anonymous. I want to get rid of alcohol from my life, and I don't want to continue going on about it, right? I want to move on with my life. I don't want to be thinking about alcohol in any shape or form a year down the road, 2 years down the road, or whatever that is, When I hear people still going to meetings multiple years after they stop drinking alcohol, it doesn't seem to me to be moving on, it doesn't seem right. And I view that from my own point of view. I see it as swapping one addiction for another. I also don't like the idea of a person that considers themselves an alcoholic long after the last drop of alcohol has passed their lips. That doesn't sit well with me either. It's just not for me. So it would be like me being obese, making a massive effort to lose the weight and still calling myself obese for the rest of my life, right? It doesn't make sense to me. So the strict adherence to 12-step program, the hierarchical structure of it, the lack of scientific evidence, and the religious or spiritual undertones of the organization. that has led a lot of people into believing that AA is a cult. Now for me, the biggest thing is always going to be that AA, that alcoholic label, right? That declaration of not being in control. At the moment when you really need it the most, when you need to have that self-control, in my opinion, you don't lose control of your drinking. No matter where you are on the scale of drinkers, you are the one that controls every drop of alcohol that goes into your mouth, right? No matter what method you use to get away from alcohol, you're the one that has to control yourself, right, from day one. So how does telling somebody at the beginning that they've lost control of themselves, how is that going to help you? I don't get that part of it. So it's important to be aware of these criticisms. If you're considering going to AA, it is a possible option, right? No denying that. Ultimately, the decision is down to personal experiences. It's going to be down to beliefs, and people should be free to choose the treatment that is definitely going to work best for them, you know. And AA, if that's going to work for you, then go for it. So I don't think AA is a cult. I don't think about it as a cult. A solution, you know, personally, I don't think it's that either. I think AA is a sign of its times. It was born a couple of years after Prohibition ended. You know, this was a time when you couldn't blame alcohol for anything. You had to put the emphasis on the person instead, right? So that's where the alcoholic came from. But I think that's part of the problem. I believe the ideas of AA are well past their sell-by date, right? I think that the ideas of 12 steps are held together by the people that support the organization, especially those who believe that they've been helped by it. And why wouldn't they think that, you know? I don't think it's a modern solution, right? Especially when our understanding of habits and psychology in general are have become much deeper, right? So maybe it's a solution to keeping alcohol out of your mouth in the short term, but the journey I'm in favor of is so much more than that, so much deeper than that. I'm for getting rid of the alcohol completely out of your life, leaving it so far behind that there isn't a trace of it left, that there's no drinker's brain left, there's no habit left. So that's my opinion for what it's worth. Take care of yourself. If you want to know more about Habits V2, there's a link down below in the description. Onwards and upwards. Keep the alcohol out of your mouth. Bye now.